We thought we knew the voice of the century, but we didn't recognize the face that appeared on our screens this morning. As the clock struck midnight on New Year's, a video began circulating that left the classical music world in a state of collective shock. It wasn't just a new song, it was a completely new person. Jonathan Antoine, the man once synonymous with a shy, bulky frame and a nervous disposition, stepped into the frame looking leaner, sharper, and more commanding than ever before. This wasn't the result of a simple haircut or a new wardrobe. This was a total physical and psychological rebranding that appeared to have happened in the shadows over the last year. For months, industry insiders had been whispering about Jonathan's total absence from the public eye. There were rumors of a health crisis, whispers that he had permanently lost his vocal range, and even darker speculations that he had walked away from the limelight for good. But as he stood there in the 2026 light, it became clear that his disappearance was actually a period of intense, private reconstruction. He looked years younger, yet his eyes carried the weight of someone who had seen the bottom and decided to climb back up. The sheer scale of his transformation, losing what experts estimate to be over 5 stone, has become the lead story in every entertainment circle. People aren't just asking how he did it. They're asking what pushed him to this extreme. This isn't just a comeback. It's an evolution that challenges everything we thought we knew about the BGT star. But as our investigation into his recent months shows, the physical change is only the surface of a much deeper, more complex story that involves a total rejection of the path laid out for him by the industry giants. And the truth behind why he chose to vanish may be more startling than the transformation itself. The most successful audition in history was secretly the most painful moment of a young boy's life. To understand the man we see in 2026, we have to pull back the curtain on the 2012 era, which wasn't the fairy tale the cameras portrayed. While millions of us were cheering for the teenager in the Jimi Hendrix t-shirt, Jonathan was internally crumbling. Our reporters have looked back at the timeline leading up to that viral moment, and the details are harrowing. From the age of 4, Jonathan was the target of relentless, targeted harassment from his peers. This wasn't just schoolyard teasing. It was a systematic campaign of cruelty that left him feeling like he was less than human. By the time he stood in front of Simon Cowell, he had already suffered a major breakdown that nearly saw him hospitalized. He was existing in a state of constant fight or flight, using his voice as a literal shield to protect his fragile spirit. The irony is staggering. The world was falling in love with his talent at the exact moment he was at his most vulnerable. He later admitted that he felt like a product being sold to a public that didn't care about the person behind the notes. The industry wanted the ugly duckling narrative, and they leaned into it hard, often at the expense of Jonathan's mental well-being. He was forced to relive his trauma in every interview, framed as the bullied boy who finally won. But behind the scenes, the wounds weren't healing. They were being aggravated by the sudden, overwhelming pressure of global fame. He was a boy who couldn't handle a classroom, suddenly expected to handle a stadium. The cracks were starting to show even then, and what happened next would set the stage for a decade of internal conflict that almost silenced him forever. For 20 years, Jonathan thought he was broken, until a single medical report gave him his life back. One of the most significant developments in Jonathan's 2026 narrative is his newfound transparency regarding his neurodivergence. For years, critics labeled him as difficult, eccentric, or socially awkward. There were stories of him being unable to complete interviews or having episodes backstage that left producers frustrated. But recently, a definitive diagnosis of autism has completely reframed that history. From a reporter's perspective, this is the missing link. It explains the sensory overloads he faced under the bright studio lights and the intense social anxiety that many misinterpreted as arrogance or laziness. Jonathan has spoken about the mask he had to wear for over a decade, a grueling performance of normalcy that left him exhausted and depleted. In his 2026 statements, he describes the diagnosis not as a limitation, but as a superpower that he finally knows how to use. This clarity has allowed him to set boundaries that were previously non-existent. He no longer forces himself into environments that trigger his anxiety, and he's restructured his entire touring schedule to accommodate his needs. This shift has also changed the way he interacts with his fans. Instead of the distant, terrified star, he's become an advocate for mental health and neurodiversity, sharing the gritty details of his journey to self-acceptance. He's no longer apologizing for being different, he's celebrating it. This level of honesty is rare in the classical world, which usually prizes a polished, perfect image. By tearing down that wall, Jonathan has created a deeper, more authentic connection with his audience. But it hasn't come without a cost to his relationships with the old guard of the music industry, who still prefer the old, manageable version of him. The world saw a mutual parting of ways, but the whispers in the wings told a story of forced choices and a cold divide. The most enduring mystery of Jonathan's career remains the sudden dissolution of Jonathan and Charlotte. In 2026, new details have surfaced regarding the intense pressure placed on the duo immediately following their Britain's Got Talent success. It's no secret that Simon Cowell famously suggested Jonathan go solo during their very first audition, a move that Jonathan famously rejected at the time. However, the industry's solo or nothing mentality didn't stop there. Reports suggest that behind closed doors, the label's focus was almost entirely on Jonathan, creating an unsustainable dynamic between the two friends. While the official line was that they drifted apart to explore different genres, insiders suggest the split was far more clinical and driven by contract negotiations that favored a solo star over a duo. In the years following, the silence between the two was deafening. Fans noticed they no longer interacted on social media, leading to rumors of a falling out that Jonathan has only recently begun to address with subtle, guarded comments. He's hinted at the toxicity of the environment they were in, suggesting that the industry tried to pit them against each other for profit. In 2026, Jonathan seems to have finally made peace with that era, but he's also made it clear that he isn't looking back. The transition from a beloved duo to a solo act was a gamble that nearly cost him his career, as the public struggled to accept him without his counterpart. But by choosing his own path, Jonathan effectively exposed the puppet strings of the reality TV machine, proving that he was willing to lose a record deal if it meant keeping his soul. He spent a decade singing other people's songs, but in 2026, Jonathan is finally using his own words, and they are exposed. On January 13, 2026, Jonathan is set to release All of Me, a project that music critics are calling his declaration of independence. For years, Jonathan was confined to the classical crossover box, singing operatic standards that showcased his range but perhaps masked his true personality. This new era is different. The 2026 sound is described as soul classical fusion, a raw and vulnerable style that incorporates contemporary elements he was previously forbidden from exploring. Reporters who have heard early cuts of the track describe it as a shattering of his old image. The lyrics are rumored to deal directly with his themes of isolation, his health battles, and his refusal to be a circus act for the elite anymore. This move is a massive risk. The classical world is notoriously traditional, and some purists are already revealing their distaste for his new direction. However, Jonathan seems unbothered. He stated that he'd rather perform for 10 people who understand his heart than 10,000 who just want to hear a high C. This All of Me movement is more than just a single. It's a branding shift that includes a new visual aesthetic, moody, cinematic, and decidedly un-opera. He's leaning into the mysterious persona that he naturally inhabits, using it to build anticipation for a world tour that promises to be unlike anything he's done before. The 2026 Jonathan isn't just a tenor, he's a storyteller, and for the first time, he's the one holding the pen. Whether this new sound will dominate the charts remains to be seen, but the shocking change in tone has already ensured that all eyes are back on him. It wasn't about the weight, It was about the war Jonathan was winning against his own body. The physical transformation we've seen in 2026 is perhaps the most documented part of Jonathan's comeback, but the how is just as interesting as the why. Jonathan has moved away from the quick fix rumors that often plague celebrities, instead revealing a grueling, discipline-heavy routine that he calls his survival manual. At his heaviest, Jonathan was over 20 stone, a weight that he admits was a protective layer he built around himself to hide from the world. In a recent 2026 interview, he detailed how he began walking 10,000 steps a day, rain or shine, as a way to seize control of a life that felt like it was slipping away. This wasn't about vanity. It was about health and longevity. He's been candid about the accidental nature of his weight gain, citing a lack of education on nutrition and the sedentary lifestyle of a touring musician. But the transformation also reflects his mental state. He's exposed the reality of his diet, moving away from processed foods and focusing on a regimen that supports his vocal health. Reporters have noted that his stage presence has shifted as a result. He no longer hides behind the microphone stand. He moves with a newfound confidence that is almost shocking to those who remember the stationary, trembling boy from BGT. This physical revealing is a metaphor for his entire 2026 journey. He's stripping away the excess, the fear, and the protection to show the world the man he was always meant to be. It's a message of hope for his followers, proving that it's never too late to off the old version of yourself and start again. The major labels thought they held the keys to his career, but Jonathan just changed the locks. In one of the most brilliant business moves of 2026, Jonathan Antoine has effectively cut out the middleman. After years of being managed by corporate entities that didn't always have his best interests at heart, Jonathan has pivoted to a completely independent model. He's utilizing 2026 digital platforms to stream directly to his fans, creating a subscription-based inner circle that allows him to fund his projects without corporate interference. This independent empire includes everything from his new music to his surprising venture into the literary world. His children's books, which feature themes of neurodivergence and resilience, have become unexpected hits, tapping into a market that traditional publishers ignored. He's also revealed plans for a digital concert series that uses cutting-edge VR technology, allowing fans to experience his voice in high fidelity from anywhere in the world. This is a shocking shift for a classical artist, a genre that usually relies on old-school prestige and high-end venues. By embracing the untold story of his life through these different mediums, Jonathan has created a diverse revenue stream that makes him untouchable by the industry's cancel culture or shifting trends. He's no longer waiting for permission to create. He's his own CEO, his own producer, and his own biggest advocate. This level of autonomy is the ultimate comeback, proving that he didn't just survive the reality TV machine, he outsmarted it. Jonathan Antoine isn't just a singer anymore. He's a living testament to the power of the unfiltered truth. As we wrap up our investigation into the 2026 comeback of Jonathan Antoine, the conclusion is clear. We are witnessing the birth of a legend on his own terms. He has successfully navigated the treacherous waters of child stardom, mental health crises, and a total physical overhaul to emerge as one of the most authentic voices in modern music. The shocking truth is that Jonathan never needed the trackers, the tracksuits, or the talent shows. He just needed the time to find himself. His story serves as a powerful reminder that the off moments of our lives, the times when we vanish and struggle in the dark, are often the moments where the real work happens. As he prepares for his 2026 world tour, the anticipation is at an all-time high. Will his new sound resonate with the masses, or has he become too independent for his own good? Only time will tell, but for now, Jonathan Antoine is finally standing in his own light, singing his own song and telling his own story. He has turned his challenges into his greatest strengths, and in doing so, he has given his fans something far more valuable than a perfect note. He's given them hope. The boy who was once too afraid to speak has become the man the whole world wants to hear.